All right. Good afternoon, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. I present to you parts 6 and 7. All right, folks. You heard me right. All right. Here we go. Chapter 6. The Stanley Cup. And yes, there's 8 chapters. We're almost done, folks, with the book. The Canadian Expidition. All right. Chapter 6, the Stanley Cup. That night, as promised, Mountie Martin stopped in Ottawa and took the boys to a hockey game. The Maple Leafs are playing. They're my favorite team, even though I'm from Quebec, he admitted. The game was as thrilling as Stanley had always heard. At halftime, a contest was announced. The fan with the best sign would be invited down to the ice and given one chance to score a goal. If the fan made a shot, a 1 in 100 chance, he or she would win a trip to the Maple Leafs next game, which was in Toronto. Stanley looked around at the packed stadium. Hundreds of fans were waving signs. Suddenly, he had a terrific idea. You think you can hold me if I stand up on your shoulders? He asked Nick. He flexed his muscles. Of course, I'm probably the strongest kid here. He caught Mountie Martin's warning look and he said, well, you're pretty strong too, Stanley. He made a step out of his hands. Here, I'll give you a boost. Not yet, said Stanley. He pulled his red scarf way down over his face and pulled up his red turtleneck to meet it. And then, to Nick and Mountie Martin's amazement, he folded his upper body into a perfect maple leaf. He folded his legs and the round hands into a stem. They learned origami. Well, I was in Japan not long ago, came Stanley's muffled voice, coming from somewhere inside the leaf. Now hoist me up! Nick did, and our crowd went wild. There's our winner, said the announcer. No question at all. Come on down to the ice. Nick, holding the Stanley Maple Leaf up in triumph, made his way down to the rink, surrounded by the admiring crowd. When he reached the center line, Stanley jumped down and unfurled himself, and the fans went wild. When the applause finally died down, captain of the Maple Leafs skated over, handed Nick a puck and a hockey stick. Stanley whispered something to Nick, and Nick handed the puck back to the team captain. No thanks, he said. We'll use our own. And then Stanley lay down on the ice and coiled himself to a tight disc. Nick took aim and swung the hockey stick hard, whacking Stanley on the soles of his boots. Stanley skittered crazily across the ice. He was hurtling for the sideline, nowhere near the goal. Stanley quickly calculated the angle and adjusted himself. When he hit the boards, he ricochetted it off. Now aiming right for the goal, yelled the announcer. I don't believe my eyes, but these two boys have just done the impossible. You did the impossible, Stanley, Nick said when Stanley uncoiled himself. Mountie Martin was right. We really do make a good team. The captain of the team skated over and shook boys' hands. He handed them the box seat tickets and airline tickets. See you in Toronto, he said. Now, since that was only 4 minutes, you know what this means. That's right, boys and girls. we're doing another chapter. All right, chapter 7, over the falls. The next morning, bright and early, Stanley and Nick bid goodbye to Mountie Morton at the airport and boarded the plane. Whatever happens at Niagara Falls, they told each other, we're already like brothers. The flight was pleasant, both nothing to distract them. Both boys began to worry about their families again. Where had they gone? How would they ever be reunited? By the time they landed, Stanley and Nick were very homesick indeed. An airport shuttle bus whisked them to Niagara Falls. As soon as they stepped off the bus, the boys heard the powerful waterfalls crashing in the distance. They couldn't see anything except a great cloud of misty spray, though. They headed for the sound, along with a crush of tourists as they walked. The boys passed several signs. Look, Nick, Stanley pointed one out. The falls are more than 170 feet high here. 150,000 gallons of water goes over the crest line every second. Nick read on another. Just then the mist cleared. The boys started to wonder at the majestic sight of Niagara Falls thundering beside them in a current of rainbows. Nick ran to the railing. Come here, Stanley, he cried over the roar. It's awesome. Stanley rushed to catch up, but when he reached the edge, he began to flap in the wind, turned up by the rushing water. How could he have forgotten his problems with wind so soon? A sudden gust lifted him and plastered him to a signpost dangerously close to the edge. Stanley tried to sliver down, but the wind held him tight. Nick climbed up onto the ladder to try and peel him off. You're the first friend I've ever had, he cried. The only one who's put up with my bragging. I'm not about to lose you now. But as he struggled to push Stanley down to safety, Nick lost his footing on the mist-like metal. Over the railing he went, hurtling through the air, straight for the crashing waterfalls below. Stanley didn't think for a second. He launched himself out, reached Nick in midair, and curved himself around his new friend like a barrel. Together they crashed into the churning water. Over and over and over, they smashed and battered against the rocks and angry waters. Finally, the terrible tumbling stopped, and all was still blackness. Well, that's the end for today. All right, folks, you've heard it. We'll be back with you on Friday. I'm your master, John. I'm your man who's called Master John Bollington. And we'll see you on the next episode. This Friday. You've heard it, folks. And yes, if you watched it after May 1st, you don't have to listen to this part. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye, folks.